Hello everyone, we're back and in this video we're going to talk about mastering ground effect to make for better landings. This is how ground effect looks like. So why did this airplane float? It was not coming that fast. What made it float? Now this example is a no landing. Why does this airplane does not float at all and why it goes low before touchdown? Both landings had about the same amount of wind. The speed on the first landing was a little bit more than on the second one. On the second landing, the pilot used ground effect before the landing, and while using ground effect, he was able to slow down the airplane. Instead of using ground effect over the runway, you can use ground effect before the runway and you can slow down and land a lot shorter and slower. Here is an example. I'm landing the Cessna 170 on a gravel bar in the Skycomics River. I'm trying to land as slow as possible and touch down as smooth as possible. For that, what I do is I get into ground effect before the landing, so I am able to slow down even more. Now this landing is in Guanacaste Air Park. You can see I use kind of the same technique to touch down early at the beginning of the runway and at a slow speed. I'm going to get into ground effect before the start of the runway, that way I can slow down even more. You see, when I got into ground effect, I gave it some power and I touched down. Sometimes you only have little bit of room to get into ground effect, like this landing on the gravel bar. We have the loft before the gravel bar, but I still use some ground effect over the water to slow down, and at the end you can hear I'm adding power to touchdown. I'm going to show a couple of more landings in ground effect. What I do is I get into ground effect and I'm able to reduce power and the airplane does not sink, so I'm able to come even slower, and at the end I add some power to stop the sink rate and I try to do a smooth landing. I find this useful for gravel bars which has no obstacles before the landing zone. Here you can see this same landing from the cockpit, and you can see the moment I get into ground effect and when I started to add power. I'm not encouraging everybody to go try this. This is just demonstration what works, and also you can see that there is absolutely no wind. About here I start to get into ground effect, so I'm able to go pretty slow. You can see the airspeed indicator above my hand. Here is another view from the same gravel bar. Again, a landing at very slow speed in ground effect. Right-based final. You see it's not a long final and also not a very long moment in ground effect, but enough to be able to do a slow and a smooth landing. This is Guanacaste Air Park in Costa Rica. So why do I do this? I do it to try to make smooth landings. I know most people watching these videos are not going to be landing on gravel bars. Also, if you do, you need to practice a lot before being comfortable flying in ground effect. This is Liberia International Airport in Costa Rica, long runway, and the tower asked me to land long in Charlie because there is an airliner ready to take off. So what I do is I do a hover taxi in ground effect all the way to Charlie intersection. This is a kind of practice that will give you that feeling of the airplane in ground effect. Find a big long runway in an airport that is not busy, and then you can start practicing this, and then you'll start seeing that your landings become very smooth. Then on a real landing on an airport you can come slow to ground effect the first 100 meters, then touch down. It will be a lot slower and smoother.
Ah, very nice.
Yeah.
This applies to any kind of airplane, although low wing airplanes, the wing is closer to the ground, so you have to be more careful with the speed, because it will be a lot easier to float in ground effect on low wing airplanes. See the technique I use in the CJ6 Nanchang. I got the power before the start of the runway, and I get into ground effect and touch down at very slow speed. You can see the airspeed indicator to the left of the artificial horizon. You can see how slow you can land by using ground effect. When you see I'm rounding up, here is when I got the power of this landing.
Just about the numbers.
No floating and using the right speed for landing. This is Arrowhead Gravel Bar in Skycomish River, Washington State. I cannot come into ground effect from far away because there are some trees, but as soon as I pass over the trees, I start getting into ground effect to slow down and then give a little more power just before touchdown. What I'm using is the yoke for speed and the throttle for altitude. From this shot you can see how I am manipulating the controls. You can see the movements on the yoke. For that I'm trying to gain speed or slow down, and the other one is the throttle for altitude. Now this is only a demonstration. Hope you guys enjoy, and if you want to practice for just regular paved runways. Just use the first 100 or 200 meters to practice ground effect coming slow, and you will see that it will start making a difference in your landings. If you enjoy these videos and want to see more, please support Backcountry 182 YouTube channel by joining on Patreon. Thanks for watching. Beautiful. YouTube channel. The description of this video, and navigate below Backcountry 182 on the top right. You can click on Patreon, and it will take you to the Patreon page where you can select your membership level. It will show you the peers and everything. By becoming a Patreon for Backcountry 182, you will not only be helping the YouTube channel, but you can also get direct advice or discount on some aviation products for your airplane, or advice or products for your airplane. We can chat, video call.